Hi there. This video is going to be long. Political aspect of internal control, just like any vehicle without a fuel or petroleum is not going anywhere. Any organization too without internal control, strong internal control for that matter, is not going anywhere. But if you want to understand critical aspects of internal control that every student of advanced audit and assurance needs to understand to pass their exams, then you are in for it. And I'm in here now for you. We are going to look at control environment. We are going to talk about risk assessment, control activity, internal audit. Okay, what can we really say internal audit brings to the table? Physical control, IT control, segregation of duty. We are going to look at compliance with law and order. We are going to look at information and communication. We are going to look at monitoring activity and a host of other things that internal control systems actually entail. Are you ready? Let's go. So, what is internal control? I'm not going to spend much time on this. The whole system of control, whether financial, whether otherwise, in form of management control, in form of physical control, in form of logical control, anything you can think of, they will fall under system of internal control. Having said that, let us talk about control environment as we pick the line items one after the other. Now, as much as I will not want to exaggerate, it is important for me to let you know that the aspect of control environment is as important as possible, having capacity to destroy every other control work that any organization could have done. Having established that, what is then control environment? Control environment is the totality of what an organization believe and do about internal control. Let me put it down so that we can see it. Control, pardon my environment, is the totality of governance behavior of an organization, be it in form of the body language of the board of directors or the management personnel and everybody within the organization, particularly those of the management staff and at the end of affairs. If they are override in control, then control environment will be weak. And as a student, especially if you have a topic of internal control, like internal control in your case study, or it comes out as a case study, you need to be able to look for things like this, that the control environment, is it really weak or is it really strong? Looking for the body language of the environment. And when we are talking about the environment now, we are talking about the management staff, we are talking about the way of doing things in the organization. If they believe strongly in ensuring that policies, procedures are followed, then we'll say that internal control environment is strong. Otherwise, it becomes weak. I hope we understand that. Then, if its control environment is weak, then an auditor will need to do more work. And if it's strong, then there may be less work to be done. That will not justify not doing anything at all, right? So that is about control environment. Then let us look at the aspect of risk assessment in internal control system. It is important that the risk assessment is conducted by a knowledgeable officer. When we are talking about risk assessment, it is important to understand that the aspect of risk monitoring, risk governance is critical for the survival of any organization, and it begins with risk identification. You could have a question like this. You need to know and work on risk identification. You must be able to identify risk in the questions given, the area of risk given. Let's say, for example, an organization is selling goods and is collecting cash. An identified area of risk is cash theft. So now we are talking about risk assessment. You need to be able to identify your risk, and then we now talk about how to assess and how to control, how to mitigate it. So that is the aspect of risk assessment. Risk must be identified, risk must be mitigated. Now, when we are talking about mitigating risk, it's either we own it completely, that is, we accept it if it's within acceptable threshold, or we transfer it in form of insurance. Hi. Looking at control activity
Then
this time around,
need to talk
in the
about
series
control
of critical aspect of internal control that we need to understand for advanced audits and assurance. First of all, an organization becomes critically control engaged when they begin to formulate policies, when they begin to become actively involved in procedures and also implementing processes, putting processes in place. Then we will say that the organization is actively in control. So control activity therefore are policies, procedures, and processes put in place by the management in order to safeguard the assets of the organization, minimize, mitigate fraud, and detect as much as possible. Having established this, we will move on now to various types of control activity. I mentioned policies, I mentioned procedures, and I mentioned processes. All these three are interwoven and interrelated, and we will be talking of authorization, we will be talking of approval, we'll be talking of putting physical controls in place in form of lock and key, and also IT, information technology access. These are types of controls that must be put in place. Of course, the segregation of duty must be in place, monitoring and the like must be involved when we are talking about control activities. And having done this, we can categorize control activity into three aspects of works. Three aspects of works. Then we'll be talking about the preventive, the detective, and the corrective. Detective, preventive, corrective. We first of all must prevent, and if we fail to prevent, then we should be able to detect. If we fail to detect, then we should be able to correct. And it is best to actually prevent than to detect and to correct. Having said this, who is in charge of preventive activity under control activities in internal control system? The managers are the owners of preventive activities, and this entails putting procedures in place to ensure smooth running of works. That is what individual departments need to accomplish for the organization. The HOD, the managers of the various departments are actually in charge of preventive activities. And this has more to do with putting policies, procedures in place and ensuring that people follow processes. And not only people, that transactions follow processes. Then, if for any reason, like any other human endeavor and human invention rather, if preventive fails, detective mechanism in the organization should be able to capture the failure. And who should be in charge of this aspect of control activity? Of course, the managers cannot exonerate themselves, but now here comes in the works of internal audit. Internal audit is a primary detective mechanism within an organization. Of course, they must be able to recommend and fine-tune processes too, just like ensuring that preventive is in place. But also, they must be actively involved in detection. If we are just joining, my name is Gbenga Olatunji, FCA from GJAMES Associate Channel. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and subscribe to this channel and comment if need be. Last but not the least, before I recap, now corrective activities. Corrective activities. When we are talking about corrective activities, we are talking about aspects of work that we failed to detect, that we failed to prevent, then we should be able to correct. So correction is actually a joint effort. It's comprises of joint work from the preventive mechanisms within the organization, detective mechanisms within the organization, and the every control aspect within the organization in order to ensure that this is actually done. So correction must be in place. And why are we correcting? We correct errors. We correct also controls that we put in place that actually the organization has outgrown. It is possible for organization to outgrow policies that we had before. It is possible for an organization to outgrow the policy procedures put in place before and processes put in place before. And that is why we need to review our policies on I can't say annual basis or biannual basis, as much as the organization keeps evolving. The control policies, the control activities also must be fully engaged and active. So this is the series of control internal control systems, and we will be moving on to some other aspects of internal control systems, looking at monitoring, looking at transaction level control and the like. Hi, we've been on for a while on internal control, the critical aspect of internal control. Just like any vehicle without a fuel or petroleum is not going anywhere. Any organization too without internal control, strong internal control for that matter, is not going anywhere. Having said that, I'm trusting that we are going to be able to tie everything together on internal control critical aspects today. So if you are ready, I am ready. We had looked at control environment, risk assessment, control activity, information and communication. I think we stopped around monitoring activity or thereabouts. So we are going to pick it up anyway from monitoring activity. Then we move on and tie everything together. So it may be a bit long a video, but it's going to actually expose you to everything you need to know about internal control for the purposes of advanced audit and assurance or auditing related courses and knowledge. Having said that, when we did or talked and spoke about control activity, now I need us to continue and tie it to control objectives. In fact, every other thing that we've spoke before on or we are speaking concerning today must be tied towards one thing, which is control objectives. Without control objectives, every control activity, every internal control activity is in futility. Do you agree as to that? Because if a destination is unknown, it doesn't worth even starting it at all. That's the logic behind internal control activity. So our control objectives must be ahead of us and in our mind. Please don't forget it. Even in your exams, remember and look for what is the control objectives in this narration that they are giving me. Okay? Having said that, now, part of critical aspects of internal control is monitoring control. What is monitoring control? Monitoring control is an aspect of internal audit, we may say, or particularly as we are dwelling on internal control. It's a part of internal control that believes that people do not do what is expected, but we do what is expected. Shall I come again slowly? People often will not do what is expected, even though they know it is rightful, but they will do what is expected. So the knowledge and awareness that people have that somebody will come or somebody has come and will still come to check on them as regards what they've done will make them to do the right thing. Not that majority of the time they want to do the right thing, but they will do it because they know somebody is coming to check on them. So that is monitoring control. So as an organization or as student of auditing, know at the back of your mind that monitoring must be part of your control. And if it's lacking in any narration, in any comprehension, in any case study, ensure you pinpoint it. And that is why we are having this discussion, so that you know it's part of critical aspect of internal control you need to look out for, and as professional, you need to put in place. I started with control objectives, so we cannot overemphasize it. So now, what can we say the control objective of monitoring activity or monitoring control is? The control objective of monitoring control is to ensure people do the right thing. It's to ensure that people do the right thing. Take, for example, when we discuss the aspect of control activities, and we are talking about policies, procedures, and we are talking about other things. What's the reason for setting policies, procedures, processes? Is so that we give people what is expected to be done. Now, monitoring control is to ensure that they are doing the right thing. Okay, so I move on from monitoring control now to control objective. Now, transaction level control is also a critical aspect of internal control that we must talk about. And when we are talking about transactional level controls, we'll be talking about authorization, we'll be talking about approval, and we will be talking about verification. Of course, we can link verification to the idea of monitoring control also. So this aspect of control emphasizes that at every stage of transaction, there should be somebody responsible for initiation, there should be somebody responsible for authorization, there should be somebody that is responsible for approval, and there is somebody that is verifying that what will be approved or that has been approved is correct in line with policies, procedures of the organization. I hope I'm impacting knowledge here, right? Okay. And if I'm moving too fast, just replay, okay? Because I will not want the video to be too long than 15 minutes. We are almost at 7 minutes now. Okay, having said that, in information technology control. Information technology control is a critical aspect of internal control that we must put in place or look out for as students in our exams question. What is information technology control? Of course, we are in the digital age, and that explains it at least a little. Now, the information technology control talks about verification too, but more importantly, talk about the integrity, accessibility, and availability. Sorry for that. Availability, yeah, of the information that we have in an organization. And not only information should be controlled, we must control even the aspect of assessing it. That is physical control. Let's take, for example, we have a department, an IT department. Even those that will go into it now must have access. We call it access control. So part of information control is access control. That is ensuring that somebody that could touch, for example, the gadgets that I'm using now, are people that are actually responsible for it or have authority to actually touch and lay hold of that company's property. If they are not, then there's a breach of information technology control, because once they can touch it, they can manipulate it. So that is an aspect of information control. So part of the aspect of information control is that we must control accessibility, we must control availability, we must control every other aspect that I may not even remember as I'm talking now, because I'm just dishing out knowledge to you. That is the truth. I'm just dishing out the information in my head and experience to you. Okay. Having said that, another critical aspect of Internal control is segregation of duty, and we cannot overemphasize that. And recently, there was an issue. Multinational finance institution or finance institution had a case of fraud, big time fraud that relates with big management personnel. And the breach actually boils down to one thing: a critical segregation of duty is lacking. Because even though somebody is a senior manager, that does not necessarily mean that he should be able to start a thing, a transaction, and finish everything and put the whole organization in jeopardy. It is not done anywhere, and it should not be done or be had among us. And if it has happened, we need to learn from this and stop it. So there must be segregation of duties. One person that started something must not end it. Is that okay? Then physical control. IT control talks about the logical control, that is those that we could not see. Now there must be physical control, which I actually let us know now that anybody coming in, even to the audit, even to the IT department, should have access. Now, even to that your office and department, somebody that enter, a staff that enter into that your department should have authority to enter and a purpose why he or she comes to see you. If not, that your door should be under lock and key. Yes, it should be under lock and key. So that is a control that only somebody that is responsible or needs to do one thing or the other given access to a particular department or resources of the organization. Okay, having said that, then we'll talk about compliance with law and order and regulation is another critical aspect of internal control that we must regulate. We must ensure that an organization minimizes penalty. I've audited many organizations. I could see that some aspect of their business that they keep losing money is the aspect of regulation and compliance with law and order. Because they do not have knowledge of what law, finance law, process law, organizational compliance, governance law, and regulation entails, they end up falling victim of government's penalty. So we need to deal with it when we are discussing internal control. Last but not the least, that ties everything together or sum it up is internal audit. It's a critical aspect of internal control too. Because having said all, there should be somebody equally that is responsible for all these things that we've been talking about. And we call them the internal auditors. Of course, internal audit can be outsourced and it could be localized. But nevertheless, we must ensure that there are some people responsible for day-to-day monitoring of the objectives of control, of the IT control, of the physical control, of compliance with law and order, of risk assessment, of control environments. This is the summary of what I've been speaking on this series of critical aspects of internal control. For those that are just joining us and did not know me, my name is Gbenga Olatunji, FCA from GJAMES Associates. We pride ourselves that we are value to life, we are value to your businesses. If you've enjoyed value in this series of internal control, why not click the button and share to somebody that you know we need this information. Tell a friend to look out for GJAMES Associates on YouTube, on Facebook, I think we are on TikTok now. Yes, and on any medium that you can find us. If you can't find GJAMES Associate, you find Gbenga Olatunji. If you can't find Gbenga Olatunji, you find GJAMES Associate, or you find us both. Okay? Comment if need be, and tell a friend to tell a friend, and subscribe to us. So, critical review now. We started this series by talking about control environment. And we said control environment is the totality of the belief systems, the ideas of the organization, of the management, of the staff, and everyone. The body language of the director, of the chairman, the management override or not overriding, everything, all those aspects talk about control environment. We've spoken about risk assessments. We've spoken about control activity, information and communication aspects of internal control. We've spoken on monitoring activities beginning from this video, and it equally covers control objective. It covers transactional level control. It covers IT control. Segregation of duty has been spoken. We've discussed on physical control, compliance with law and order, and internal audit. Okay, what can we really say internal audit brings to the table? Internal audit brings to the table monitoring of the effectiveness of internal control on daily basis in the life of an organization. I don't want this video to be long. You can check the series out and you can comment and speak to us on other aspects of your finance and accounting that this video may not cover.